Hello YouTube, this is Bruno. Let's construct a really fast crop farm that produces wheat, carrots, beetroots and potatoes. So if you look for a fast crop farm on YouTube and Reddit, you will probably be referred to something like this, with a lot of villagers and minecarts collecting the wheat. If you use carrots, for example, you can also use the sharing mechanic, so the villagers throw the crops to another villager. Now, this setup is, in my opinion, pretty terrible. Now, this is already a pretty decently sized farm. You have 32 villagers in there, 2 villagers per cell, and 16 cells. They're all working, but the rates of the setups are pretty bad. So taking a long-term average, you get about 1,400 wheat per hour. So let's remember you have 32 villager entities which are pretty laggy. You have to breed and handle 32 villagers and you have to build this up. And as a result, 1,400 wheat per hour, which is really nothing, for example, if you need a lot of packed mud. So what's the answer? And the first answer that I will give you is this micro farm by Redizios. And the idea of this farm is very simple. You have a piece of farmland, so there's a waterlogged stair in the back. You plant the crops and you have 3 dispenser bone mealing them. And then comes the next layer and you have a piston, and the piston will open and close. And what this does is to change the light level in this spot here. So crops will break if the light level goes down to 0. So what we have is here alternating a high light level and a low light level. We still have the 3 dispensers filled with bone meal. And the player just stands there. Let's go to survival. Holds right click, aims at the farmland, and if you time it right, you will get a ton of wheat. And this farm already produces about 16,000 wheat per hour, along with the seeds. Of course, you can do the same with carrots. Just see the carrots come in at a rate of about 45,000 carrots per hour, which is super fast. Now, the only issue with this farm is you only use your inventory to pick up the items, so there's no item collection. And also, you can run the farm until the bone meal runs dry. So if you fill the dispensers once, you will get about 9 stacks of wheat, or maybe 25 stacks of carrots or potatoes. I have never used beetroots. So in this video, I will use carrots, because carrots are nice to crafting golden carrots. And I will use wheat, because wheat is used, among others, to craft packed mud. This farm is pretty much ideal if you just want a few stacks of the crops. So how can we make this fully AFKable? So let's over-engineer the shit out of the setup here and add a supply for the bone meal and add an item collection. Now what really happens in this farm here, this redstone here, is just another funky way of having an observer clock. So basically you can also pulse the setup like this, just pushing in an observer. What can we do for the setup? Let's first start by adding the bone meal feed. And what we can do here is create dropper lines. So this is on the dispenser. There we have droppers on the back, and the droppers will transport the bone meals to the dispensers. And we have 3 droppers at the end. We need 2 hoppers per dropper to reach the desired speed. And what we have in the back here, so we power this block here, which will update the 3 node blocks. And with these node blocks, we will power this dropper in the back, and this dropper. And this redstone dust will power the piston. So everything is powered in here. If we turn on this lever, you will see all of the droppers are firing. And the piston is running. And we can use our crops like that. So this is a setup that allows us to fill a double chest for each dispenser. Now this will give us a few more crops, but we are still far away from our goal of making this AFKable. But what we can do now is replace these chests here. Let's get rid of them. And we will just place a couple of minecarts. So what you can do here is just use some blocks that are not full blocks like that. So you can use iron bars, which are pretty cheap. Place a rail like this. Put in one minecart, push it to the side, put in another minecart, break the rail carefully and then push in the minecarts like that. And now each of these minecarts will cover 4 hoppers. And now if we place a chest above these minecarts like that in the middle, both minecarts can pick up the bone meal from the chest. And the 2 minecarts will distribute the bone meal over these 6 hoppers. And each minecart works at 8 times hopper speed, so this is fast enough. So we have double hopper speed for each of these droppers. The supply of bone meal will come from a crafter. We will craft bone blocks to bone meal. So here we have some input of bone blocks. And here we have a little setup, so we read this chest. If the chest is empty, this piston will contract. We'll activate this observer clock. So if we take stuff out, you see whenever the chest is empty, we will activate the observer clock, which will craft new bone meal and fill this chest. And this is once again fast enough for our 6 times hopper speed that we need. So this setup here solves our bone meal input. Of course, it's even better to use a shulker box unloader. And this is by Samos the Sage, the usual shulker box unloader that is quite often used. So we have a chest with shulker boxes with bone blocks. And now the lever is a bit inconvenient down there at the bottom, but we will fix that. And now we can stand here forever and produce carrots, or at least as long as this shulker box unloader does not run out of shulker boxes with bone blocks. Now, one thing to note with this setup, if you just use right click without any mods like fast right click, sometimes it will not work. Sometimes you will just place the carrots and they will be broken. So if you see no crops come in, just stop the right click and try again. Once you see items coming in, you just keep holding right click and it will produce. So this was easy. Now we have the bone meal supply. What's a bit more effort, at least from the building perspective, is to make an item pickup and item sorting and collection. So let's just put in our trusty carpet bot Steve and let our carpet bot hold the right mouse button. So we are now producing carrots again. And what you can see is that we have minecarts to distribute the carrots over a number of hoppers, and we kind of need 8 hoppers. The items are placed in a water stream and go over item filters. So we need 2 item filters for wheat and we need 6 item filters for carrots. And the rest, namely the wheat seeds, will be composted. And the composted bone meal is fed back into our bone meal input. And we place the lever up here to make it reachable from this position here. But we still have the same observer clock. So all we added is this minecart system here. And we will also power all of these droppers at the back at double hopper speed, at observer clock speed. The item filters are standard impulse item filters. For the wheat, we will use a compacting setup, so both item filters go into this crafter. And the crafter, so we have the usual compacting setup here. We will read this crafter. We will feed in a signal on the side with signal strength 8. This is to subtract mode. So this redstone dust will activate if we have 9 items in here. We'll activate this repeater. This will strongly power this dropper. This will weakly power this crafter. And we will craft a hay bale. For the carrots, the best we can do is to feed them into shulker box loaders from Glots. And we get shulker boxes of carrots, and all of the outputs from the shulker box loader go into this chest here. Now, one thing that we have to do is to make sure that the player can get items from the water stream here. Because if you stand here in survival with the minecarts picking up the items really fast, sometimes the player will not pick up enough carrots. So what could happen if you stand here and hit right click, that at some point your carrots are not replenished and the number of carrots goes down. And we prevent this from happening by having the water stream set up like that, so that the items are lined up against this inner corner here. So the player who stands here can pick up the items. So any carrots that come in from the water stream can be picked up by the player. And of course you set up your inventory that you have one spot for the item and all other inventory slots are filled. And here you have the carrots or the wheat seeds. And now we are fully AFKable. So let's see how fast the setup is. And I'd say pretty fast. For wheat, we get 1,950 hay bales per hour, or over 17,000 wheat per hour. With carrots, we get 47,000 carrots per hour, which is over 5 times hopper speed, or about 27 shulker boxes of carrots per hour. That's a lot of carrots. And that's really it, assuming you have a bone meal farm that produces shulker boxes of bone blocks. Now, what you could, of course, also do is to rig up a bone meal farm. Now, the setup does consume 54,000 bone meal per hour, so you need quite a potent farm. But the world download also includes this setup, where I have a 2x2x7 Chromos bone meal farm. That is fast enough. So let's turn this on. And you see the bone meal comes in, is sent over double speed item filters, because sometimes you get stuff like azalea, saplings, or seeds. And this setup is enough to keep all of these double speed filters stocked. So these are the usual double speed filters that were presented by Ilmango quite a while ago. So maybe that's your farm if you want to have a really fast crop farm. Now, to conclude the video, let's show you the one tricky part in building, and that is how to set up these minecarts here. So let's say you have those 4 droppers that you want to power, and you have 8 hoppers feeding in, and then you add 4 more hoppers like so. And now for the first layer of minecarts, we need 2 minecarts, 1 each for 4 hoppers. So you could use honey, or you could use other blocks that are not full blocks. For example, grindstones work as well. And now you place 2 rails like so, put a minecart on each of the rails, break the rails, and perhaps using a temporary block, push these minecarts again in the corner. And you can put some bone meal in, and the bone meal should go out in force at 4 times hopper speed. Do this for both minecarts. And now we want to push in glass over the minecarts. So you put 2 glass blocks over the minecarts, and then you place 2 pistons facing down. You power the pistons, which will push in the glass over the minecarts. And now we will place a minecart on top of that can distribute the items over the 2 minecarts below. And now we use iron bars to align the minecart over these 2 minecarts. So we need one minecart that can distribute the items over these 2. And iron bars have a smaller hitbox than grindstones or honey. So this will work. Place the minecart, break the rail, push the minecart in the corner, like so. And now we once again push in a glass block over this minecart. And now we can just place a rail, and on top of the rail we can place a dirt block. Then place another minecart, and this dirt block will become the farmland where we place the saplings. So behind this farmland comes the waterlogged stairs and so on. So this is the setup that can pick up the items from this farmland and distribute the items over these 8 hoppers. Using Lightmatica, I have no doubt that you will be able to build the rest of this farm from the schematic. Now, is this over-engineering? Maybe, but I have a setup very much like that in my industrial district. Now, it's not quite the same. The version in the world download is a bit optimized. And here I just put items in a water stream and collect them in my central storage. But this setup allowed me to produce quite a lot of shulkers with hay bales. So yeah, this farm allows you to get a crap ton of wheat and carrots. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you want to see more content like this. Please subscribe so that you don't miss any of my videos. And see you next time. Bye bye.